All right, I'm just saying, Colin, it looks like a stormtrooper and that makes it awesome.
Jake, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing.
It is a good thing. It's a great thing. Stormtroopers look cool. This truck looks cool. People should buy this truck.
I don't think the Stormtroopers were a huge selling point of the Star Wars franchise. I mean, they famously could not aim, probably because out of their big, goofy plastic helmets, they couldn't see. Just like how when you're driving this thing, you can't really see.
They got cameras to take care of it. You don't need to see when you're driving if you look as cool as you look in this thing.
I have to disagree, but you guys might be able to tell that we are looking at the newly redesigned Toyota Tundra today. And if you can't tell from our previous conversation, we definitely have different opinions on how this thing looks.
Luckily for you all, we have devised a series of scientific tests to determine if this is a good truck or not. So what do you say, Colin? Let's get into it.
So Jake, I have to say, you said you designed a couple of tests for this vehicle, and I'm a bit worried since you're not the science major out of the two of us.
I've had some professors who worked at Toyota, all right? Shout out Professor Barry if you're watching this. So I think I'm qualified. I'm well qualified to test this truck.
All right, Jake, I have to say, I'm very curious. What is your first test?
The first test, any good pickup truck should be terribly difficult to get into. So we're gonna see if it's difficult to get into the Toyota Tundra. Now with 8.5 inches of ground clearance, it's not the tallest truck there is, and there's the air suspension. We'll talk about that in a bit. And we have our power deploying running boards on this Capstone model, top of the line here, folks. Colin, is this truck terribly difficult to get into?
I have to say, Jake, I think it failed this test. That was very easy.
It has failed its first test. Colin, let's move on to some more rigorous tests too. All right, Colin, are you ready for our next scientific truck challenge?
What is it, Jake?
Okay, so any true pickup truck should be impossible to park, right? It should be a gigantic pain. We're gonna see if this is a true pickup truck, it should be impossible to park. Now, there's no auto park feature. Don't exactly expect to see that in pickup trucks just yet, but tell us how it is to park regularly, because it does have some features that help you out, right?
It does. You have this very useful camera, and Jake, we have a situation. I just parked the vehicle.
You just parked it perfectly on the first go.
That might be a failed test, Jake.
This is a failed test. The Toyota Tundra is not impossible to park, and a big part of that is because of this great camera system. So when we're in drive, it's automatically gonna show us what's in front of the vehicle. If you wanna make sure you're in the lines, you know, it can audit your parking job here. You switch to this mirror view and you can see we are cleanly inside the lines here. We can also check out, if you put in reverse, we'll see our backup camera. Of course, we have guidance there with a little trailer hitch guide right there if you're looking to back up. And just the size of this screen means you can fit a gigantic backup camera next to a full-size 360 camera. And the guidance there is going to be super helpful for parking. I really like to use this view right here, this 360 view, to make sure that I'm not hitting the car on my right as I'm pulling into a parking spot at an angle. I find that to be very useful. But perhaps my favorite, but maybe least useful camera right here is the bed cam. It's fun just to look back, make sure if you have everything tied down, make sure those bed ties are working. So I'm very pleased with the camera system on this car, and I think, unfortunately, we have to fail the Tundra at this truck task. Any good pickup truck should have a tiny square rear window that you have to reach back and manually slide open, and you have to look really goofy while you open it. Colin, could you please test this feature on the Toyota Tundra? Oh goodness, I think it failed that test.
I'm gonna have to say, Jake, that might have to be another fail. I mean, that is quite frankly a fantastic rear window. And of course, that is going to be standard on all the new 2023 models. So I think it's gonna continue to fail.
Toyota, this is not looking good. All right, Colin, it is time for our final test. Any good pickup truck should be horribly uncomfortable. What's going on here? Do we pass or fail with the Tundra?
Jake, I think we do fail our final test. This thing just rides so unbelievably well for a pickup truck. How is that possible?
Well, here's the thing. I felt Toyota might fail this test, and that's because they switched out the suspension in the rear. They switched out the old-fashioned leaf spring with the more modern multi-link, which is going to give the vehicle more control, especially when towing and it's going to increase the comfort of the vehicle. Now, this vehicle also has the air suspension, this Capstone model, and you know, you do feel the bumps in the back, right? It smooths out the front very well. You will feel things like speed bumps and whatnot very harshly in the rear, but that is just a limitation of the platform. If you don't have weight in the back of a pickup truck, you're just gonna feel that. But relative to other pickup trucks, I gotta say, this is far too comfortable, and I'm afraid it fails the test.
Jake, we have an issue though. That was our last test. So is this even really a pickup truck?
I think we're gonna have to do some further testing here throughout the video and see where this truck does succeed.
Now that we've pulled over, Jake, let's talk about the looks of this car. And we're gonna start here at the front. Of course, let's start with these headlights. As you'd expect, they're LED headlights, daytime running lights, auto high beams. You also have LED fog lights, which I love to see. And that's not all with these headlights. They have some very good towing functionality, specifically auto level and headlights. And what that's gonna do is when your rear end starts to sag due to the weight of a trailer, these will balance out with however much the front gets elevated.
That is a very cool and useful feature, but it's not the coolest feature of these headlights. I'm about to show you that. If I turn on the hazards, you will see this truck has sequential turn signals. A feature previously only on the Mustang and cool sports cars is now on your Toyota Tundra. I think they look quite snazzy. Now, real quick, I want to touch on some of the performance, some of the off-road performance, because this vehicle right here, if you look at the stats of the Capstone compared to some other pickup trucks, they look a little off. This vehicle has about 8.5 inches of ground clearance, about 21-degree approach angle. That's a little bit low compared to some of the competitors. This is the kind of high-end Capstone version. So this is not meant for that off-roading. It can do that. It's got the air suspension to raise up. It's got some off-road modes and whatnot. But if you want to go off-road, you're going to want to go to the TRD Pro model. That's going to get you a little more ground clearance, a bit over an inch more of ground clearance, and that's going to raise your approach angle from 21 degrees to about 26 degrees. So that's just something to note with some of the off-road aspects of this truck. Now, let's talk about looks, because this is a place we disagree.
Yeah, I have to say, I think the front looks a little sad. You have this just kind of big frown here.
But you know what? I think it looks angry. It's like a truck. It's saying, I'm here. I'm a rah, you know? The only truck that looks more angry than this is maybe the Ford Raptor. I quite like it. You're not as big of a fan. Why don't we talk about that at the side a bit?
Now let's talk about the side. And before we get on to how we feel about the looks of this truck, let's talk about some of the just standard stuff. Starting down here, you have these 22-inch dark chrome alloy wheels, which are one of my favorite features of this vehicle's exterior. Of course, as you move back, this truck does not have the big fancy tow-in mirrors that you might have seen. Of course, those mirrors are power extended, so if you need to move them out to get a better view of your trailer, you can. They also have this very cool light that'll kind of light backwards and help you see your trailer at nighttime. Now I have to say, usually I don't like white trucks, but I'm a big fan of this color. Jake, what is it?
Yeah, so this is Wind Chill Pearl. It's a $425 option. And I know you're thinking white truck, that means work truck. Not on this Capstone. This color, I hope it comes across on camera, has just a very nice pearlescent undertone to it. I think it looks real nice on this crew cab right here. Now there's two cab sizes you can get on the Tundra. There's no just single cab anymore. You have to bring your buddies along for the ride now. You are either getting the double cab, that's the smallest cab you can get, or this Crew Max cab, which is just absolutely massive. What size cab you get is also going to affect the size of bed you can get. The longest bed, the 8.1 foot bed, which is just absolutely massive, you're only getting that with the double cab, not getting that with the crew cab. On the Capstone, you're only getting the 5.5 foot bed right here with that Crew Max cabin. There's also a 6.5 foot bed you can throw in between. But you know what? I think the Crew Max with the 8.1 foot bed, that would just be too much.
I think that would be too much. It would probably make the vehicle look more awkward than it already does. And on that note, let's talk about how we feel about this truck. Let's start with my argument as to why I don't like the appearance of this truck. And there's a lot of little nitpicky things I could mention, but that really just wouldn't be fair to the truck. So we're going to talk about my least favorite angle, and that's going to be right in this front corner. I think the execution of the floating roofline was poorly done. You have this kind of dark piano black-esque color here that's not quite in line with the rest of the window. And from a distance, it looks really goofy. And I think this area is just a little too large for that black color. I think it could have helped to maybe make this a bit smaller or just not go for the floating roof line. And I also think the whole slope here is just not quite aggressive enough.
And here is why Colin is wrong. I have often been a critic of the floating roofline myself, but if you've watched our previous videos, you'll know the rooflines I've criticized have been those that float at the rear. I think when they get rid of the front pillar, it's a real clean, continuous look, and I really do like the look of this truck. I think it looks bold, I think it looks aggressive, futuristic. I love the Stormtrooper look. Guys, you gotta let us know who is right, Colin or myself. Let us know in the comments below. And what do you think about the looks of the Toyota Tundra?
All right, so now let's talk about the back of this truck. Of course, this is a truck in, oh.
We have a challenge from the producers.
We have producers?
Yeah.
Huh. Remote start the truck. Well, this shouldn't be too hard, Jake. I mean, I've been doing this for years now. I've remote started tons of, there's not a button on the key.
Exactly. That's why it's a challenge. We don't have quite the budget that other automotive shows do where we blow up cars in challenges and stuff, but the producers figured this would be a good budget option, having Colin remote start the car.
I need to find out what producers are talking about, but let's try and remote start this. I'll get to that later.
It's like watching an animal.
That would be the wrong button, Jake. I think I'm gonna have to throw in the towel.
Okay, even I forget how to do it. Press the lock button twice in quick succession and then hold the lock button the third time. And now hold.
This is truly a challenge for both of us.
That's what the online guide said to do.
All right, we've made little progress on that previous challenge, but I think I have a lead. The ancient texts have told me if you press the lock button twice and then hold it a third time for about 5 seconds, that it should theoretically remote start.
So that's a mistake. I told Colin to do it for about 3 seconds. Seems about 5 is what you need to do it for. Will it do it? Ah, there we go. So you just got to hold it for a long time. Colin, I think we failed the challenge though.
We definitely failed the challenge, and I have to say, maybe just put a little button on the key fob.
Yeah, that's a tip for Toyota. Your free gas guzzler tip is to just put a remote start button on the key fob like literally everybody else.
Well, now that that fiasco's over, we can finally talk about...
Colin, there's a new fiasco. You see, many of the domestic manufacturers, Ford and General Motors, have multifunction tailgate staircases that fold out of the bed, complete with handles and all. It's a great way to chop your fingers off with all those moving parts. How am I going to chop my fingers off if there's no multifunction fold-out staircase in this bed?
Jake, that hardly qualifies as a fiasco because this tailgate is still great. You have this conveniently little placed button here. It's hidden within the taillight. You press this, it lowers with dampening. You can also do that from your key. And you have this very nice convenient footstep. So you can easily hand on the rear, you're up, you're in.
It is nice that that step is power. Of course, it's not as showy as some of the fold-out staircases, but I think that's probably a lot more useful and you're gonna use that a lot more than something you have to manually pull out every time.
I'd have to agree, but I will say there is one slight fiasco. A lot of other manufacturers, you can put your knee below the tailgate and it'll lift with power. You can't do that on the Tundra.
Yeah, so if your hands are full, you lift the tailgate halfway with your knee and it will automatically close for you. That's a nice feature I wish a lot of trucks have. But also, this truck has that nice little side button. I wish a lot of trucks had that. I really like the rear of this truck because the features you mentioned, but also they have the towing connections right here at the back. So you don't have to reach under. They're easily accessible right here at the back. And additionally, you get some chrome on your bumper. This is that top end Capstone edition. Colin, why don't we talk about some of the nice amenities they've put in the bed?
Now let's talk about the most important feature on any truck, the bed. Of course, you can get in using Toyota's nice, simple feature. You have this little button hidden here that we've been talking about. Press it, up, in. It might not be as flashy as other manufacturers, but it is very easy. Let's talk about some of the standard features in here. Of course, you have 4 movable tie downs right here and on the other side, as well as 4 stationary tie downs in each corner. One little weird design choice is they sprayed the bed liner over the 2 stationary ones in the front, but not the rear. I don't think that's a big deal. You don't really care if those get dented up too much. But about that bed liner, it is a must-have on any truck, and this is gonna cost you about $500. That is a very good price for a must-have necessity. Cannot emphasize that enough. Of course, you also have some wood supports here. So if you want to lay wood horizontally, vertically, across the truck, maybe you need to build a rack for yourself, you can do that. Of course, you also have some nice tech back here, the LED bed lights, the full-sized outlet, and of course you have the aforementioned bed cam. So if you need to see how your cargo is looking, you can easily do that without getting out. Now let's talk about some of the interior comfort of this vehicle. Starting in the driver's area, a lot of very pretty materials in here. Of course, you have this American walnut, real wood in here, as well as the contrast with the white stitching, the darker colors. Very luxurious interior look. You also have some nice climate controls. You have the dual zone climate control, controlled with the airplane-esque switches. I love that. Of course, these seats are very comfortable. A lot of adjustment. You can adjust the lumbar, of course, fully powered. Now, how about you, Jake? Do you like it back there?
Yeah, it could be nice to see a third climate zone back here, but other than that, this is fantastic. Being the Crew Max cab, we have ogles of leg room back here, tons and tons of leg room no matter where the driver sits. In addition, we have power back here. We have USB-A, USB-C, full-sized outlet as well, and we have heated and cooled outboard seats. I really like to see the cooled function back here. Additionally, that big glass roof up there lets in so much light. Colin, I just think they did a great job with the material choices and the design. I think it's a really interesting design too, right? Like most pickup trucks, we see a very vertical kind of center cluster, right? We have tall screens rather than horizontal ones. The buttons are all vertically stacked. Here, it's all horizontally laid out. Toyota made a real good use of that large vertical space that this truck has. It really feels open, airy, roomy. The only downside is, I will give it to you, the kind of cool, aggressive look of this truck does make it hard to see out the front. Other than that, I love this interior.
Where'd Jake go?
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I
Oh,
can tell.
there he is. Jake, who are you talking to?
It's the producers. They say everyone needs to like and subscribe to Gas Guzzlers for more weekly automotive content.
You need to tell me who these producers are.
All right, Colin, we are out on the road in the Tundra doing some further testing here. Now, you daily drive a Tundra, a bit of an older model. Why don't you tell people what they need to know about driving a full-size pickup truck if they haven't driven one before?
I think the biggest thing you need to know is you really have to pay attention. This vehicle is just so much larger than your normal vehicle. It doesn't turn the same. It doesn't handle the same. Everything feels just a little bit different, so you really have to pay attention. But I think this vehicle, unlike the trucks of old, the learning curve is much less steep. The vehicle has they've gotten so good now that even people who haven't driven a truck can really make the adjustment.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I had never driven full-size trucks on a large scale before prior to getting in this vehicle here. This is the first, loaner I've been in that was a full-size truck, and I got used to it probably after about an hour or two. I maybe did about 50, 60 miles of driving. By the time I did that, I was pretty much had the hang of it. The things that struck me were definitely the turning, like you mentioned. When you're in a two-turn lane, you got two lanes next to each other turning. At first, I did almost take out someone in a Civic once, drifting into their lane. But the truck very helpfully reminded me, hey, keep an eye on your lane marker, because we have that great Toyota Safety Sense 2.5 system in this vehicle. The other thing that kind of struck me, just as someone who hasn't driven a full-size truck much before, was just the engine noise. Now, I've gotten used to it, but we were in the electric Ioniq last week, so getting into a full-size truck and hearing that six-cylinder engine go, roar, kind of struck me at first, but it's a good sound. I actually really like the soundtrack of this vehicle, and once you get on the highway, of course, it blends into the background, and if you're driving this daily, you're going to get used to it real quick. I was just in a super quiet electric car recently, so that's why the noise struck me. They did a real good job with the noise, vibration, and harshness in this vehicle. If you look in the wheel well, you will notice kind of a felt finish, and that's going to help reduce some of the noise, vibration, and harshness in this vehicle. It's a real premium cabin experience. They did a real good job with the noise overall. Now, Colin, there are some useful camera features in here, not just for parking, but those cameras are going to be helpful when we're on the road as well, aren't they?
They are. So one thing they'll do is if you start to slow your vehicle down, as I will do here, you will see the cameras will start to automatically turn on, so you can kind of see what's in the proximity of your vehicle. As you can see there, as I reach about 10 miles an hour, those turn on, but once you go over that, they will turn back off.
Yeah, so that's going to be useful if you're coming up to a stoplight and you got this big angular hood, right? So it's hard to see what's right in front of you. You're coming up on someone's behind. This camera is going to turn on. It's going to let you pull up close to them without hitting them. I really like these features. But Colin, why don't we see how this vehicle does at a bit higher speed on the highway?
Colin, it's time to get on the highway. I have Sport Plus mode engaged. Here we go. That engine for a turbocharged 6-cylinder, it sounds like a V8. You know, the V8 might be gone, but you know what? I don't miss it doing the highway pulls. We'll talk about that in a bit, but for now, I just mentioned I engaged Sport Plus mode. The drive modes make a big difference in this vehicle. Colin, why don't you walk us through them?
Yeah, so from factory, you're gonna have 5 drive modes with the ability to customize, which we'll talk about in a bit. But there's really a bit of a hack to it. Out of those 5, 3 of them are very useful. You have the Eco mode that's gonna adjust your engine, your transmission, and that's when you're trying to save on gas. One issue with that mode, if you floor it, it's gonna take a second or 2 to respond.
Yeah.
So if you were trying to make a turn, you need to not use that mode.
We've gotten in a sticky situation once or twice before because you floor it and it takes about 2 seconds or 1 to 2 seconds for the engine to actually kick on, because what Eco does is it smooths out the acceleration curve. So it makes it a lot less responsive, but you're saving more gas.
And of course, you don't want to be using that to start, like we said. So you could use normal mode, which is just your base drive-in. It feels very responsive, much more responsive than Eco. But if you need more, say you're trying to merge into a busy highway and you need to go, you have a choice of Sport or Sport Plus, which are going to adjust steering responsiveness, power, suspension, all the fun stuff to make this car really go. And you saw it back there, it will go.
Yeah, so when you put on Sport S Plus, you really feel it lock in, the steering becomes more responsive, and the pedal becomes, boom, instantaneous. I actually can't snap, but if I could snap, I would do it there to emphasize how quick and responsive Sport S Plus mode is in this vehicle. Now, there's also a customizable mode, right?
Yeah, so in your center screen, while you're not driving, so we can't do it now, you can modify all those factors I just talked about, your transmission, your steering responsiveness, your engine, suspension, all this different stuff to make a drive mode you want. So in theory, there's unlimited drive modes to this vehicle.
Now, I want to talk about driving on the highway, because I think this thing, I don't know what you think, I think it's a highway beast. It's a cruiser beast.
Yeah, of course, the suspension feels great. With Sports Plus, you can easily pull. It does surprisingly well on the highway.
Yeah, I think you just sit back here, you kick on your active cruise features. Let's talk about those. The way that we are going to put on our lane centering and our radar cruise control is by pressing activating our cruise control with the cruise control button. Then we just press set and boom, we are activated. Now you can't take your hands off the wheel. This is a hands-on automated system, but it will keep you centered in the lane. I have noticed on some more aggressive turns, it will shut the system off with very little warning. So you definitely always want to keep your hands on the wheel in this vehicle. And of course, Toyota doesn't advertise this as a hands-free system. This is a hands-on driver assist system. But if you keep your hands on, the lane centering is just going to remove some stress, right? It's going to take care of things a bit. You can just kind of sit back, relax, have the car assist you in staying centered in your lane and controlling your speed. Now, one thing that really helps with these adaptive functions is the fact that you can see what's going on in your heads-up display. This vehicle has a very crisp, clear heads-up display. And back there, it just shut off the system. It just shut off the lane centering with no warning, no audio, nothing like that. So just so you know, it will just shut off periodically. Really, on this system in particular, you gotta be watching out, because I'm guilty of taking my hands off every now and then in some vehicles. Do not do that in the Tundra. But most of the time, it's going to keep you centered in the lane and you're good. But back to the HUD. The HUD, it looks really good. It's got your speed limit there. It also is showing you whether you're driving economically or not. So it's got a little eco gauge showing you how good you're doing, and it's showing you if you are centered in your lane and what safety systems are active.
Now, this isn't the engine you normally find in the Toyota Tundra. Jake, what engine is that?
Yeah, so the base engine, and it's hard to call it a base, is going to be a 3.5 liter twin turbo V6 engine putting out 380 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque. Again, it's hard to call that a base because that is just a beefy engine. You know, a lot of pickup trucks are coming with these 4 cylinders base now, but Toyota is out here with the twin turbo V6, which is just really impressive. Now, if that's not enough power for you, you can upgrade. And Colin, we have the upgrade engine in this truck. What's the story with that?
So in this truck, you have the iForce Max hybrid engine. Now, a lot of people hear hybrid and they think of the hybrid of old, pure efficiency. No longer is that the case. This is now efficiency and performance. This is going to give you about 437 horsepower with 583 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah, and either engine you get is going to be mated to a 10-speed transmission. I really like this power plant after driving this truck around. I think anyone who's really driven, it kind of feels to me almost like the Sienna. And I know they're completely different powertrains, but for some reason, I just get Sienna vibes from the powertrain of this engine, and I mean that in the best way possible. If you've driven the V6 older Siennas, you know those things go. And this just has some same really smooth, creamy power delivery, and maybe I'm just getting some weird placebo or whatever effect where I feel like they have the same feel to me, but the powertrain in here, I just can't say enough good things about it. All right, Colin, I love this power plant, but what's even more impressive than its pure highway cruising ability is its towing capability. So why don't you give us the story on that?
Yeah, so with the perfect configuration, you can tow up to 12,000 pounds with the Toyota Tundra. Now this one we have today is not going to be towing that much, but with a different configuration, you can get some mind-numbing numbers of towing capacity. And that's not all, you have some very useful tech. Let's start with tow haul mode. That's going to allow you to tow some larger things, like maybe a jet ski, something like that. And then for those really aggressive situations, you have tow haul plus. You're trying to tow an RV, a large trailer, you need even more throttle response. That's the mode for you. You also have blind spot monitoring for your trailer. So if anyone's ever driven with a trailer, you know how scary it can be not knowing your blind spot. They've got you covered. Another useful feature on the Tundra is automatic backup with a trailer. If you were at the DC Auto Show, they had a display of that running the whole time, and you can see just how impressive that is.
Yeah, so if you have a trailer hooked up to this, my understanding is you can just back up and it'll keep the trailer straight for you. Is that right?
That is right. And if you saw that DC Auto Show demo, what they would do is drive forward. And then as they started backing up, they would turn the wheel and let the truck correct itself.
That is some crazy tech. And you know what? That's just a really useful feature. I can think of all the times I've been at the boat ramp and I've seen some guy struggling to back in a boat that he just clearly has no idea how to drive with. Now though, you just kick on the Tundra, you say, hey, do the work for me, and the Tundra takes care of it. That is one of the coolest features I think that I've seen rolled out in modern pickups in recent times. And I'm really glad that Toyota has implemented in here. Because really, I can just say this thing seems like it's gonna be a tow haul beast with the power plant, with the tech, with that rear air suspension. They've really just thought of everything here. In front of you is the king of infotainment. This is the best infotainment screen in the automotive industry right now. I will stand by that. You can fight me in the comments if you would like, but it is absolutely wonderful. It's over a foot in size. It's extremely snappy, and a very high quality screen was obviously used here. As the text looks sharp, the blacks look deep black, deep inky blacks, bright whites right here. This looks like a real tablet or computer, not just some infotainment screen that was an afterthought. The fact that it's made of glass gives it a real premium feel here. I'm a big fan of this system. My only complaint is they got rid of the setting that would change the entire look and feel of the system and give you several different kind of profiles. Other than that though, being taken away, this is a very positive story right here. First of all, your wireless CarPlay. If you have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, it looks absolutely wonderful up here. We can just go and order some Domino's on this giant, big, beautiful display, get our Tundra some Domino's, but you're not gonna wanna eat Domino's in here with this beautiful white interior. So love that big Apple CarPlay. You can see if I go to my main menu right now, it just looks absolutely wonderful. If I go back to the main Toyota app right here, you can use the music right here to integrate your Apple CarPlay or Amazon Music directly into the core audio system. Love seeing that. My one complaint about the audio system is it does sound like all the audio is coming from a single source up front. It doesn't sound like it's surrounding you. I did check the treble and the fade and whatnot, the bounce and fade, if you will. And yeah, I made sure it was on traditional settings, but it still sounds like it's coming from a single source in the front. So I'm not sure what's up with that. But this infotainment system really is just a highlight of this vehicle. It is absolutely gorgeous. Your infotainment system is complemented by this digital driver's display, which is controlled by your steering wheel right here. And I really like this display. The screen itself is very high quality and the hardware is very good. I think the software looks a bit outdated, but that's a pretty minor complaint. As we scroll through the menus here, you'll see we're in the Eco menu right now. I think this is where most people will keep it because you can see your MPG. You can see we're getting about 17 MPG right now in this vehicle with a mix of highway and maybe 30-mile-per-hour driving. If we continue over, you do have a compass. You can see what your audio source is. Now, there is an important settings menu here because one setting here that's really important is for your heads-up display. If you hold OK here, this is how you're going to be able to change the position of your heads-up display. This is important so that you don't get the heads-up display cut off at all or something like that. So if you're wondering where that setting is, well, it is right there. I really like this display. Again, I think it looks a little dated. It's not my personal style, but the actual hardware itself, the screen and the information displayed, super useful.
All right, let's talk about storage in the Tundra. And Jake, I have to say, overall, they did a very good job. You have about 4 cup holders a person. You have a bunch in the back. You have 2 in the door over here. And you also have these ones in the middle. Also in the middle, you have the Qi wireless charger with storage space next to it and in front of it. But one of the best features is the wallet storage in the middle here. On this little tray, you can slide it out, place something like a wallet there, in this case my phone, slide it back in, you're good to go. Below that, you have some more storage space with some charging ports in there, as well as this large center console that can open. But Jake, I think you had one big complaint with this vehicle.
I did, and that is actually partly due to the hybrid nature of this vehicle. You need to put that big hybrid battery somewhere, right? Well, they put it under the rear seats. Downside of that is you lose the ability to get that completely flat load floor back there. In a lot of pickup trucks, you can fold up the rear seats, and what that allows is it creates a cavernous, large interior storage area. So if you have something more sensitive to the elements or whatnot, you can keep it in the climate controlled cabin and use that very large interior storage area. Well, in here, there's kind of a bump there because of the hybrid battery. Now, it's not the end of the world. You'll still be able to fit a lot of stuff back there. You're just losing out on that completely flat load floor. But I bet if you're crafty, you might be able to craft some sort of like shelf that goes next to the battery, and then maybe you could have a flat load floor. But for example, brands like Ram build in that flat load floor shelf for you, so you don't need to do that. Toyota has not done that for us here, so that's a bit of a disappointment. However, I think the story here with the storage, right, is largely positive. Like you were saying, they thought of all the small things that you're going to be using every day. That's just a once a month sort of deal for most people that you can kind of work around. Colin, as we're about to pull off on the highway, you know, get back to home base here, I gotta touch on my favorite highway feature, and I think you already know what I'm gonna say.
I do.
It is this camera mirror. I thought the camera mirrors were a gimmick. I'm a changed man. Every car should have one. Here's what the story is with this. Instead of having a traditional rear view mirror, they have replaced it with a screen. Now you're saying, what if the screen fails? There's still a mirrored finish there. So you can have a traditional mirror and turn off the screen if you would like. However, the benefit of this screen is that it has a live camera feed looking out the rear of the vehicle. If you have something tall in your bed, you will probably see straight over it with this camera, even if it's blocking the rear window. I'm a big fan of this system. It works great, and you don't have to worry about things like glare and whatnot that are a bigger problem with the traditional mirror. So definitely make sure you option out a Tundra with the camera mirror. All right, I know you don't like the looks, but come on, it's a pretty awesome truck.
I have to say, looks aside, everything else impressed me. I mean, some of that tech is seriously impressive.
Yeah, especially that screen was just out of this world. Probably the best screen in the automotive industry right now. I was really impressed by that screen, especially from Toyota, right? As a company we don't normally think of as one with super high tech in their vehicles. We usually think of them as being a few years behind some of the other automakers, especially in the pickup segment, but they have leapfrogged the industry with this truck, and I am just frankly very impressed. I can highly recommend it, and I think am I right in saying Colin would recommend it if you like the looks?
I would, and I think this helps with a lot of the truck stuff. When driving an old truck, doing all the, the parking, the trailer stuff is so hard to do But in this, they have you covered, all the towing accessibility, the cameras. It really removed a lot of the difficulty. I think it made trucks more accessible.
And it's just a real solid people carrier in there. You can fit 5 big adults in there, have a perfectly good time, very comfortable interior with high-end amenities. That American walnut wood with the blue ambient lighting really ties it all together. So Colin, I think we can end this review with 2 thumbs up.
I'd have to agree. And once again, I've been Colin, that might have been Jake, and this has been Gas Guzzlers. You should like and subscribe for weekly automotive content, and we'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone.